Everyone, before we start, I have a announcement to make. This is to inform you that all the sessions today will conclude by 4:20 p.m. All participants are required to exit the Bharat Mandapam venue premises by 4:30 p.m. and sessions teams will must ensure timely closure in accordance with security protocols. The expo would be open till 8 p.m. You could visit the expo as well. Kindly ensure you adhere to the instructions to leave the session halls by 4:30 p.m. to avoid inconvenience to all concerned. With that, I would like the panel to start. Today's panel is on balancing sovereignty and collaboration, AI frameworks for nations. We have an all-star cast featuring Shilpa Kolhatkar from NVIDIA, Tulio Andrade from COP30, Daniel Abadi from CDPI, Sudeep Srivastava ji from METI, and we have Rahul Mathan from Trilegal. I think you're going to have a great time. I'll let Rahul take the floor.
Thanks, Mihir. So look, this is an interesting conversation to have, particularly at this fairly interesting time in the geopolitical history of the world. I think we'll all agree that there's really no need for every country in the world to build a semiconductor industry, to build the entire AI stack. But at this particular point in time, there is this feeling that we must all, as nations, be self-reliant, be self-dependent, be independent, and be resilient. And so I think in that context, it's really important to have this particular conversation, because unlike widgets, it's actually not possible to be full stack AI from top to bottom, other than if you are a very large country with I guess there's probably China and India that qualify as countries that potentially have the ability to do full stack AI, and there are a large number of countries in the world that also need to think about this in that context. So that's one lens that I think we're going to talk about, which is there is on the one hand the sovereignty angle. And then there is, on the other hand, the real important part of collaboration. And then, since we're talking about AI framework for nations, we're also going to take a planetary look at the problem. And we're going to try and understand this from the perspective of some of the most complex problems that the world and the globe is facing right now, and how that sort of global nature of that problem can force us to think in sort of a new way. So with that brief introduction, scene setting, as it were, I'm going to turn to Shilpa, and I'm going to say, Shilpa, in many ways, the root of all of this, the base of this entire stack, is silicon. And as far as you are concerned, you make the silicon, and you are fairly agnostic. I mean, if someone, a big AI lab gives you a lot of money, you will give them the silicon they need. If a nation gives you a lot of money, you'll give them the silicon they need. I don't want to make you sound like a mercenary, but I mean, at the end of the day, you are essentially building the silicon that this whole AI revolution needs. But I want you to answer the question in the context of, there are these large frontier models that are doing amazing things that, quite frankly, are being diffused to the whole world. But you balance that with the need for sovereign nations to have some resilience. And as someone who is building, in a sense, the engine that powers this, what is your strategic direction as a company, and what is your strategic advice to the nations of the world as to how to package this and think about this?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much for that, and very excited to be here. First of all, thank you for having us here. So what I'd like to say is sovereignty is, yes, it is about building every nation having self-reliance. The independence in terms of being able to operate the AI in case of any kinds of geopolitical issues and whatnot. But it is also about interdependence. Increasingly, AI is definitely, the future of AI is global, but it's going to be deeply local as well. And as you stated earlier in the beginning, that not everybody has to like recreate everything that's already been done, but focus on creating the domain specific models that solve for the unique problems of the nation. That is where the sovereignty, the aspects such as building a solution based on the nuances of that country, using the local data sets, using all of the nuances of the cultural aspects of that nation is what brings in those elements of sovereignty and relevance to the nation. And also, in terms of the whole AI stack, yes, the foundational layer of infrastructure is definitely essential. But there are many other pieces, ingredients, which are equally important. So there's the aspect of ecosystems, talent, the right partnerships. So I would say that silicon and infrastructure, the compute is one part, but having the data, having the talent pipelines, having this ecosystem of researchers, innovators, startups, industry is equally important. So as NVIDIA, in fact, we play a key role in the compute infrastructure, but also across the spectrum in innovation, in participating with the research entities. A lot of big research, all the IITs and schools here is where we collaborate with. And the future of AI is really collaborative.
Okay, I'm going to just ask you to expand on that a little more. I mean, I know we think that the silicon is sort of the substrate, and that's the most important. But you're absolutely right. That's just where we start. Can you tell us a little bit more about how there's resilience that we need further up the stack in a similar way? The example that occurs to me is the real cutting edge performant models are almost like magic right now. But not everyone can build that. But we all don't need these magical things. There's a whole bunch of AI that's actually very useful that could potentially perform lower down on the stack. And just for the audience to understand, because everyone seems to be so hung up about the fact that H100s are whatever it is, and I don't want to get into the technicalities, but just the wide range in the stack that you can use for AI.
Absolutely. So, it's more critical to build domain-specific models, and you can leverage what already exists out there without having to duplicate the large language models and the goodness of that has already been done. So we don't want to duplicate all that work. Instead, we want to leverage that, and that is where that what makes it sovereign is the ability to tune those models based on the domain-specific, nation-specific data. And of course, there's also aspects of governance, who is going to manage and continually keep that model updated with the right local data sets. All of those frameworks are also equally important. And those form a very important piece of the sovereignty. And there is, as you said, a lot of open models can currently be used in order to build that domain-specific model.
So, Sudeep, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to turn to you because everyone knows, particularly this week, that India has gone down this path of promoting sovereign AI. You've been, and I want you to talk a little bit about that. What you've done, what India has done. But particularly in the context of this larger question that I'm talking about. Why did India decide to go down the path of actually acquiring a lot of compute, promoting the creation of 12 foundation models now, and supporting that, financially with all sorts of other support, compute support, et cetera, et cetera. What's the Indian strategy, given that we now have the server models being released, and we're realizing that the server models are state of the art on many important parameters? Sarvam is telling me that the question that India cannot compete with global models is now set because we can. But I mean, it's not just that. So what's the idea? Why is India going down this path, given that there are so many complexities and difficulties with it? And once you answer that, I actually really do want you to go into the nuts and bolts of how it's done, just in case other nations are thinking about this. We may not have the capacity of India, but how would we do that?
So thank you very much and namaskar, good afternoon to all of you. This topic and the question that you raised is very pertinent, especially today when we talk of sovereignty. So today happens to be also Shivaji Jayanti. You come from Pune, you told me just before the session. So anyone from Pune knows Shivaji, and Shivaji has been one of the symbols of sovereignty. The other term is collaboration, and collaboration is all what we are seeing today in this conference from 16th. Coming to the specific, why India decided to go for a sovereign AI stack is that ultimately it is the strong sovereign nations that can do collaborations for the benefit of humanity. As we all know, AI stack has got 5 layers. The first layer is of course the energy layer. The second layer is the chip layer. The third layer is the data set and the data centers, the cloud service providers. The fourth layer is model, and the fifth layer is application. So India AI mission, when it was launched in March 2024, it intended to cover all these layers with, of course, the energy was separate part, but the second to fifth layer were covered in the India AI mission. And the purpose of that was that we want to have a sovereign stack so that we can help world and especially the global south to come up with solutions. So we decided to have a compute layer. In compute layer, what we have done is that we have compute as a service. So we have empaneled 14 service providers, CSPs, they have committed 38,000 GPUs. Another round of empanelment is at the verge of finalization, and that may another 25,000 sort GPUs. Then for the chip layer, we have launched various schemes like the PLI, DLI, electronics component manufacturing. Of course, NVIDIA is going to be a great partner in all that thing, and so are the other multinationals that are in this field. And then for the model levels, which you asked, was that why we have 12 foundational models. So the reason is that we want to have something that has got local context into it. So example, if we are using ChatGTP, and ChatGTP, I don't know how many languages we have in India. So they may not be able to be that comfortable with that language. So the data set training of ChatGTP or any other foreign model will not be based on the data here. So that is why we have an AI coach in our India AI mission, and the data from that AI coach is Indian data, and that is used to train these models. So they will be used for various governance issues. As far as the application is concerned, a few days back, someone has said that we are almost the use case capital of the world. In fact, we have got maximum number of applications, and application layer is actually one area where we are already the leaders. So these layers are not that they are independent of each other. As far as the energy layer is concerned, that is not covered under Ministry of Electronics and IT, but you have very recently seen that the Parliament has enacted the Shanti Bill, and we are looking forward to addressing the energy issue also for this. So ultimately, we intend that we should have a sovereign stack, but for us, sovereignty and collaborations are not contradictory, they are complementary. So I would like to say that sovereign people across planet can collaborate to have a progress of humanity. So that addresses all the 3 sutras, the people, planet, and the progress.
Sudhir, thank you very much, because the organizers told me somehow I have to plug people, planet, and progress. I think it's been ticked. I don't have to do this ever again, and we can focus on sort of the meat of the conversation. I wanted to come back to you because you mentioned that we are offering compute as a service. I think it's important to perhaps dig into this a little bit, because otherwise, I mean, the other model, and I'm going to come to Daniel as well, because as we think about compute, companies buy compute and then they put out their products. But if nations buy compute, which is what we must think of in order to be smarter about how we do this, we have to find a way to provide it as a service. And can you just spend a little bit on, how do I get compute as a service? If I'm a use case builder, I've got a use case and I need now inference compute because it's okay. I built the application, but many customers are coming to me and they're saying, look, I want to do an inference query on this application, but I don't have the computer. I have a little bit of compute and it's melting because I have so many customers suddenly. Can the government support with that? And I'm asking this question specifically because I think countries of the world perhaps need to look at this model because that is the more efficient and economic way to do this.
So one of the main themes for this summit is democratization of the AI assets and resources, and compute is one of the critical thing among those. So what we have done is that here we empanel, then we have a portal on which the user registers. After they register, they seek a compute. If that is available, that is allocated to them. Once that is allocated to them, then when they do it or use it based on GPU hours, then we have the 40% subsidy that we release to them. Gradually, we are going to a stage when we will have adequate compute. In fact, if you have gone through the budget this year, they have given and also subsequent the trade deal that has been announced, you will see that India is going to emerge as a data center capital or the compute capital of the world. So when that happens, then of course, India has always been a believer of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The entire world is our family. We come from a civilization that says Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, means let all be happy. And the theme of this summit, Sarvjan Hitay, Sarvjan Sukhay, is also welfare for all and happiness for all. So India will definitely be contributing on that front. How that happens and when that happens will evolve gradually. As of now, we are very clear that we want entire global South to benefit from this AI revolution that is ushering across the globe.
So, Daniel, I'm going to move to you. And as you can see, we're slowly zooming outwards from silicon, which is like the grain of sand. We're now at nation level. But I want to go like larger than nations. And, with CDPI, we met a while back, but arguably, the G20 was when this whole DPI moment happened. And you, as with many others, have helped take the idea of DPI to the rest of the world. You do a lot of work in LATAM. But I think almost before your work is done, we have this new engine that is powering through, which is AI. And I think the problems are similar. We felt that nations needed DPI because that was the way to do digitization efficiently. But we now know it's quite clear that for developmental objectives, AI is going to be a complete game changer. But in many of the similar ways, but also in very different ways, rolling out AI is challenging and different from the way we rolled out DPI. As you speak to countries around the world, how are they thinking about the challenges of AI diffusion? What are the constraints that they are feeling in terms of these are their ambitions, but this is what they're capable of? And I also want you to reflect on some of the comments on this that have been made so far. Is there as you speak to the countries, is there a resilience issue? Is there a sovereign resilience issue? And are there any ideas you can get from India's approach of, say, compute as a service, etc., to aggregate demand, perhaps not just within a single nation, but a group of nations, like some LATAM grouping, some African grouping? Are these thoughts that are happening? Sorry, I dumped a lot. Pick whatever you want out of it. But you know me, I ask complicated, difficult questions.
That's fine. Hi all. Congrats to MIT for this great week. I think I'm gonna build on top of like the 5 layers of the stack. I'll add the 6th layer, which is like India's secret sauce, which is people and talent. I think sovereignty, it's everything for me. It's always a remix. Like we were talking about sovereignty, about the cloud 2 years ago. And governments were trying to build data centers, and now they're trying to build AI. At the end of the day, it's about capacity. And it's not just the silicon or the chips or the language models or the foundations. It's how pragmatic and agile is a government to create the safeguards to move data, to have consent, to change models, to develop the framework for the use cases. That idea of having some sovereignty on the process, it's developing capacity. And what we see in the different governments, it's that leapfrogging sometimes it's a thing in digital transformation, but going to AI without doing the data and having the data in order and having like basically your DPI on the stack, it's like buying a Ferrari and didn't have money for the gas tank. And that's how you can define it. Like, that's awesome. It's shiny. We cannot use it. So we work with the governments to understand that we need to finally do the homework. Like, you can do AI because you build a hard, you have UPI, you have a huge ecosystem of organizations and companies. Like, you have your house in order to then scale. And that idea of bringing from technology, like, into this, like, even NVIDIA, like, you basically provide my gamer era when I was a kid, like, how we scale into that. It's how you solve a problem. So when we see now in countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, it's like that opportunity to deliver better services, like to be more inclusive. Like, I will say, like, I said this yesterday, like, bureaucracy, it creates inequality, but also creates inflation and creates poverty because it separates. And we finally have a tool on like AI to basically kill bureaucracy and make it more efficient.
So you mentioned, and I really like the analogy of the Ferrari without the gas tank, but quite frankly, it's the opposite for countries of the global south. We have a lot of gas if data is oil. But that gas is useless without a Ferrari.
Yep.
And so this is the ultimate paradox. And how are we going to equip the countries of the global south to take advantage of that gas that they have? And I mean, you really don't need a Ferrari. You could sort of do like a Maruti 800, and that's okay. But I think countries don't even know how to do that because we've got gas, but it's sort of buried in the ground, and we've got to mine it, we've got to refine it, and we've got to put it into a shape that's actually capable of being used. How are the countries of the global south thinking about it? Because my worry I have is that if countries of the global south are not thinking in their sovereign interest, there will be, I'm not going to name, corporations that will come and mine for them. And the unfortunate thing about this is that once it's consumed, put into the model, then it's a one time only. Once you've ingested the data, then it's gone. Are countries thinking about this? And as we go down the panel, I want to move to more serious issues around governance as well. And this is perhaps a way to start that.
Yeah, I think that there's an evolution about the DPI movement in the different countries that are setting the layers to then connect into AI, like countries creating data exchange platforms and creating payment infrastructures and creating digital identity and providing more services. We're seeing countries and cities and states developing initial chatbots with some services that are connecting and then creating the infrastructure to do that. I think the important part is also creating the capacity within the administrations to do that. It's not always deploying something, it's sustaining and evolving that in time that allows our administration to deliver services.
I'm going to, progressively zoom out, and I'm going to zoom from a bunch of nations to the planet because, this is not an unambitious panel. Having Tulio, so Tulio is with the COP30 presidency. Having Tulio here in an AI session, the easy way to use them is to say, data centers are bad for the planet and stuff like that. But I'm not going to do that because that's not the way you and I have been talking about this over the years, right? So I think I really like your framing of the fact that, and I'm going to say it because I don't fully understand it. The way you said it to me, and I'm going to ask you to explain it to the audience. And you said that the topology of AI is very similar to the topology of climate change. The language is different, but the topology is the same. I instinctively feel that you're onto something, but I don't fully understand it. I think the point is that there's a lot of data in both areas. And perhaps AI has sort of figured out how to harness it a little better than the climate world has figured out how to harness it. But maybe I'm just sort of, putting my words into your mouth. Tulio, can you just explain that idea and the role that data is going to play in the climate movement going forward? And you can perhaps start by telling us the role it played in COP30 as the first place where we started to talk about this new way of thinking about climate change.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Raul. And it's such a pleasure to be here. At the very core, both the climate challenge and also AI, what we're talking about are complex systems. And complex systems, they are very well known for their nonlinear behavior. And I believe that we all see the exponentiality in which both AI challenges and solutions and climate challenges and solutions, they are evolving. So we see climate impacts really increasing exponentially, both in terms of severity and frequency. But it's very interesting, for example, that Dario Amodei from Anthropic said we are reaching the end of exponentiality, which is also another behavior of complex systems, which is the fact that there is a moment in which a system transitions. There is a moment of phase transition. In AI, we are reaching that point. In climate, we are reaching that point. And what is the biggest challenge of climate change are not actually the extreme weather events, but what we call climate-induced tipping points. Tipping points in terms of the collapse, the sudden irreversible collapse of geophysical and ecosystems that can trigger one another in a dynamic of cascading and a chain reaction in domino effect. What changes when we are in that perspective is that predictability is no longer the norm. And what does that have to do with sovereignty and nations and AI? Now, in a context of inevitable unpredictability, nations will have to become themselves collective intelligence ecosystems. And what is interesting in the AI debate is that for someone from the climate field like I am, the intelligence seems to be confounded with prediction. Prediction is an important, but only one leg of intelligence. There is another leg, and then coming from the climate, we do little prediction, but we do a lot of resilience. And resilience is the second leg of intelligence, which means the capacity of systems, be them the economy, the society, not only to predict, imagine a future so that we can transform a future and reach prosperity, but also the capacity to withstand shocks that we cannot predict. That resilience is a leg that will be extremely important as we now come in a moment of human history in which we are transitioning phases in everything: technology, climate, economy, geopolitics. So prediction is important, but when the unpredictability is the norm, the capacity to withstand the unpredictable is even more important. And what that debate comes to the AI debate is that the biggest driver of resilience is cohesion. The biggest driver of cohesion is integration. So there is also a technical discussion that we have here, for example, DPI and interoperability in integrating different systems through data from local to global, as Shilpa has mentioned.
But I want to just dig a little deeper on the interoperability idea. How exactly is that going to work? Because look, even, and Sudeep will tell you, even within government, doing interoperability is difficult. All of us know in all our governments, I'm not picking on the Indian government, which quite frankly is better than many, but it's difficult to do it. To now talk about interoperability, not just between regional nations, but also at a planetary scale. And not just that, also for multilateral institutions, which actually are the repositories of a lot of the relevant climate data. How are we going to take that step to build that interoperability? Because it's only when the data breaks out of the silos that you can really do effective prediction. I believe that we have a lot of the data. I mean, I said we have to mine the data, but perhaps at the international climate level, the data is already fairly good. It's just not connected. And if it does get connected, the intelligence that we can get out of that will be incredibly powerful, almost to the point where I think that, I don't want to say we'll solve climate change, but perhaps hidden in that are some ideas as to how to do it in a easier, more efficient way than what we thought we were doing. I'm new to the climate change arena, but I realize that they're doing this on Excel or even maybe on paper. A lot of the commitments, I can't believe that in this day and age, that's the way we measure our commitments.
Absolutely. This is a great example of the languages being different, but the topology being the same. The climate regime was actually born with the idea of transparency and comparability of emissions data. This is interoperability. So what is missing now is how do we connect everything so that the data that is comparable and interoperable can actually not only be PDFs and reports that are uploaded, but actually data and value that can be benefited from AI, for example, for prediction, but for resilience as well. So what we see now in the climate challenge is that we have a lot going on in terms of solutions, in terms of finance, in terms of initiatives, in terms of engagement. It's absolutely everything fragmented. And another principle of complexity science as well is that the more connections we are able to have, the fastest and the biggest scale we get. So again, we are in a situation in which there is a huge opportunity to unify the digital and the climate twin transitions now, so that they become a one single revolution towards prosperity. Because if we don't do it now, they will be merged in the future, not as opportunities, but as risks.
And Shilpa, you picked up the mic. I feel that you wanted to intervene,
add to that.
but I also want you to just pick up on the point on governance, because everything that we're unpacking here has some fairly significant governance issues. And I also want to zoom back the same way, right, from the micro all the way up. But yeah, I know that you and Tulio were speaking a lot about digital twins and those sorts of things. So please
So I
help
was
with all
going
of
to
that.
add to what Tulio was saying in terms of how technology and specifically AI, in fact, can solve for this complex domain of climate because of the way in which the old numerical methods, which are the old physics-based methods, were just very, very complex, intensive, and those actually can be solved by AI. And in fact, at NVIDIA, we have undertaken the challenge of building a digital twin of the whole planet Earth. And so that is truly a game changer in the way you can start to predict the impact of certain combinations of certain events in how the climate is going to affect different things, such as natural disasters or sea level rise and so on and so forth. So it's a very powerful tool in terms of predicting and simulating how climate is going to start impacting livelihoods and economies.
I'm going to turn to the audience for questions in a bit, but I want to get some very quick responses from the panel. Sudeep, I'll come to you. Once again, on the governance issue, there's this alignment that the models have, which in a sense is its own governance, and that comes from the people who build the models. Now, if we have only one model, obviously we can completely control alignment, but you've chosen to get 12 models, and we've got likely to have different alignments. And I think I'm asking the question not because of India. I'm asking the question because we are going to have different models that are coming out. We've got Chinese models, we've got French models, and we're going to have many countries saying, look, I want to do my own model. I'm wondering whether this is going to cause us to splinter more in governance, or is there any other idea? Obviously, we have rules that we all have to abide with, but there are shades of gray. And how do we think about governance in this world of multiple models?
So basically, India is a diverse country, and world has got even more diversity. So obviously, if you want to have just one model, then I think it is not possible to capture each and every aspect of it. The more the diverse ecosystem you have, the more the number of models you can have. Because the models are primarily designed to solve the problems. So use cases will vary from model to model, and the local contextualization is very important. So having one model is something which is not the right way to go about. We have selected 12 startups, and in this summit itself, you have seen that some of them have come up with the launch of their models, and many more models are likely to be launched shortly. Also, the selection procedure for more startups for developing the foundation models is at an advanced stage, and we can hear some good news on that front also. So having more models is a good in a way, but yes, we do need benchmarks, and that benchmarks can vary from country to country, provided the broad governance structure ensures that there is no unsafe or unreliable use of AI, because that is a very critical concern. We have to ensure that the ethical AI is there across the globe. But there will be different models. There should be million flowers that should blossom on that front. But yes, at the same time, the governance has to be a more streamlined activity. Now, India released its governance guidelines in November 25, and here we put trust at the forefront. So we encourage trust, we encourage innovation, but at the same time, we also want that the AI should be safe and reliability. So if you go through that document, these are the themes it is focusing on. And I think world, especially global south, can take a lot of clues out of that model.
I want to pick two things up from that, one for Daniel and one for Tulio. So Daniel, the discussion here has been, how do we? I hate pessimistic conversations, and I think one of the things that this conversation has thrown up is that the power of data, the way Tulio says it, comes from the interoperability. Core to that is the ability to exchange data. I know you've spent a lot of time thinking through the data exchanges and how that would work at a very mundane level, I guess, for DPI. But now there's the opportunity to do it for a much more, a larger predictive level. What are the governance things we need to think about as we build data exchanges for AI? Both from the perspective of one, safeguarding the data, as well as from the perspective of dealing with national sovereignty. A short answer, and Tuli, I want you to think about the concept of trust, and at a multinational level, particularly at a very fragmented time right now, you have a very difficult job of sort of creating trust in nation states in order to achieve our common goal. But first on exchanges.
Okay, super short. I think the key for that is how you architect the solution, how basically you orchestrate the use of data, how you invoke tools to the models, if you are using agents or whatever. I think that idea of orchestration, like keeping that layer on controlling the use case, on how data flows and which tools are being invoked or pulling into the agents and being executed by the models, I think it's treating, if we're talking about AI being like a modular thing, we can take the best thing of the world. And so we can use like different models, we can use like different infrastructure, yes, and we can play with the different blocks. Like it's a DPI approach to AI at the end of the day without being that romantic idea. But I think that part of orchestration will be key for the governments or the countries to maintain control on their sovereignty, but also use the best of the world.
And Tulio on trust, and if you've got questions, just raise your hand. I don't know how the, oh my goodness me, there are a lot of, oh good Lord, people are standing up because they got so many questions. But Tulio, quickly, because we don't want to get in the way of people and their questions.
Absolutely. Well, on trust, the key, and that's the most fascinating about presiding a COP this moment, is the notion of interdependence. And this is something that in the Global South, we're starting to realize that it's intuitive from our cultures. We know we are interdependent. So trust is emerging from the Global South and through a new perspective of governance that is not building blocks and castles, but actually ecology. And this is very much aligned with DPI, for example, that is radically modular. So instead of having this big ambition of starting with everything, we start little and organically enhancing trust.
Okay, I'm going to go to the audience for questions. I have a rule. This is a question, not a statement. So if you can't end with like a question, don't start. So I'm just going to pick the gentleman there because he was very eager, but I'm going to pick 3 questions. So I'll pick a few others. Yes, a question, really short. No, the guy behind you.
Yeah, my question.
Yeah, sorry. I'll give it. Don't worry, we'll get you. Yeah. Question.
Yeah, we are finding that as far as these LLMs are concerned, NVIDIA, etc., they are launching a lot of connectivity with hyperscalers, but not with smaller businesses. For example, DGX hardware is still very expensive, and
What's
these
the question?
chips are also. So how can we, integrate with the small businesses for the
How can we do
rural
small
businesses?
How can we do small businesses, right? Okay, so let's get that. Get another question. Yep.
Yeah, my question is more about the future outlook. In next 10 years, do you foresee AI alliance similar to defense alliance?
AI alliance like a defense alliance?
Yes.
I don't know who's going to take that, but let's just take one here and then we'll go to this side of the room. We get 3 questions, we'll get 3 more questions from there. Yeah.
Yeah. While we're talking at the national level and everything, large language models definitely make sense. The question is, more and more the return on investment for commercial organizations is only going to be on small language models. So in that sense, the COP issue of about looking at energy requirements all can come down. Any thoughts on the future of SLMs and how this whole concept can change?
Okay, so we got 3 questions. I think the first and the third question are sort of similar in the sense that one, how do we use it for small models? Maybe Shilpa, you can take that. And I think certainly the SLM question is a Tulio question. The alliances, perhaps Daniel, you can take that. Don't think about a defense alliance, but just think about an alliance. So I think that's an interesting question. No one on the panel has got a defense background, so we may not be able to give a specific answer. But Shilpa, just really quickly, because I want to get 3 more from you.
Yeah, certainly. So I think, how do we get small businesses, right, to innovate? And
I think the question was, but you're selling to the hyperscalers, but yeah.
Yeah, but actually through our collaborations, such as with the Indian government, in fact, with the India AI mission, that effort is truly to democratize the access of AI to startups, to SMEs, to come and access and build, on top of that infrastructure. So we are truly doing everything in the way of engaging with ecosystem as well, because we have a program called Inception, which is a virtual incubator for startups, through which we provide access to GPUs and things like that. So we have some programs available in-house in order to avail
it exists. There are programs. You just have to dig and find it. Daniel, if you can, are we doing alliances? Because it seems to make sense. Some countries are too small, but they will become bigger once they ally with other countries. Are we doing those alliances for AI? Would that be an interesting thing to do?
Yeah, so 2 answers in one. Basically, I love small language models. Governments only need a small language model. You're not doing rocket science. That brings into, we got alliance on clusterings, like what happened with small islands, small countries, regional things. I don't have an idea what's going to happen in 10 years. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. What I know is it's going to have a regional view. It's going to be reused, and trying to and sharing make us all better. If you see the progress in the humanity, it's about sharing knowledge.
And Tulio, the flip side of the small language, because if the languages are small, they're not going to burn that much compute or energy, and then we won't have a problem with climate change. So, maybe that's the thing that we have to look at the positive side.
That's one aspect, and obviously small language models will be very much key for the climate challenge, especially in terms of locality. But again, coming back to Daniel's point, if we don't integrate data, language models, they are not going to be sufficient. And then also talking about the alliance with AI, President Lula is coming to India also here. And this model of alliance is already emerging of a third way in which Brazil and India, for example, are already will be announcing a digital partnership. The difference is it's not only a digital partnership for Brazil and India, but in benefit for the Global South. So there will be some announcements also on the notion of planetary intelligence that is open for the Global South.
Okay, announcements coming. I want to pick 3 questions from here. There's a gentleman who's sitting. I mean, if you take the effort to sit in the front row, you should be rewarded. But there's a lady sitting in the back row, and I'm going to give equal reward for the lady in the back row. 3 questions I'm going to pick up. Yeah.
Rahul, actually,
short question.
Very short question. Actually, in India, our legal processes are very lengthy and very slow. I just want to know your response how our sovereign AI models are going to help and improve our legal processes.
See, the moderator is not supposed to answer questions. Okay, I'll take that. The lady.
Thank you. Very quickly, culturally, India is diverse. Sovereign.
Louder. Just put the mic closer because I can't hear. And I just want a question.
Yes. So, sovereign AI stack for India. How do we ensure it's consent-driven and bias-free?
Okay, so that's Sudeep is going to answer. How do we ensure sovereign AI models are consent-driven and bias-free? Wow. Okay. And there was a question there. Yeah.
Hello everyone. So my question is sovereign AI, right? I mean, so we are going to be create AI for the different industry specific, like we did for the healthcare or finance specific, right? I mean, then how the government can help us to validate it, or maybe it's compliance level valid or not. I mean, right? Because that's very much important.
Okay, so that 2 questions for Sudeep, right? So why don't you take the 2? I have a small mind. I can only keep 3 questions at a time. I'll get you. So let's just do it quickly. Yeah. So one is this: how do we ensure governance and consent, and then how do we ensure validation? I think these are 2 similar questions that perhaps you can answer.
Yeah, and just I would like to add one thing to the previous question about the SLMs. So out of the 12 foundation models, 4 are SLMs. And as far as the Indian story is concerned, SLMs are going to play a very critical role. You see, most of our problems, day-to-day issues are domain specific. SLMs are going to be very important there. Government realizes it, and we are definitely working on it. So SLM foundation models are somewhere at the very core of our thinking. Now coming to the other question, which was pertaining to how we intend to have the consensus for the AI stack that we made. So for that, data protection bill is already an act now. So your data cannot be used without your consent. We have got AI governance guidelines in place, and we have got transparency in form of AI Kosh. So whatever data we are using, it is available. So if there is some bias, it will obviously be visible to all. So we are very committed that our data, which is used for training and inferencing, is free from any biases, and the privacy of individuals are protected through Data Protection Act.
Excellent. And we have just 1 minute left, so unfortunately I'm just going to answer this one question. I mean, lawyers live on the fact that it's complex and that no one can understand how it works, and so you have to come to me, pay me a lot of money to explain it to you. To now say that AI is going to now make me redundant is a horrible way to end the session, but I agree that very, very quickly the friction that exists because of these inefficiencies are going to go away. Because quite frankly, AI is going to make this a lot easier to do. And even though I made that opening remark in jest, as a lawyer, nothing would make me happier than to see a lot of these frictions go away and for us to be able to live in the world in a much more efficient way. The time is up. I want to thank you all for being a wonderful audience, and I want to thank the panel for a very, very enriching and enlightening conversation.